I forgot to order it.
And no,
Chris, start us off.
all right, we'll take it away. So, no, I have thoroughly enjoyed, like, it's just fascinating like jumping into this book, like not really knowing what to expect, seeing like, okay, it has, as I'd mentioned, there's probably everyone else is jumping on a couple of the different stories in here. One reminded me of one from Diary of a CEO. It reminded me a lot of that Robert Cialdini's. I think that was 3 or 4 years ago. We read that one, like this influence, the psychology behind influence, that side of it. But as I'm going through this one, the author, and I really enjoy like her reading this as well too, because she put some emphasis on a few of the different words or names or whatever. It just adds that nice little touch. But overall, getting into the meat of the book, I think the first big thing that really jumped out to me is how much our own confirmation bias really does not get swayed. Like when we have made an opinion and how our brain will actively seek out things that will only support it. And it was just, and then also disregard information that goes against what our preconceived notions or beliefs are. And I think that is such, it explains perfectly so much of the division in our world today where there's the brain's ability to try and take in new information, and it will only truly accept it or take it in if it confirms something we already believe. And it just helps dig in the trench. So just, but her being able to explain this much more intentionally or intelligently than I can, it's just fascinating listening and reading along with this one here. And even as she was alluding to with Google, and how your Google searches. They're not even unbiased. Like they learn, they're algorithmic. They're like, what are the things that you've searched in the past? What are the people that are searching in your area? Like how even that will custom curate your search when you're looking for something. And again, that's what it's designed to do, but how that can ultimately sway you one way or another looking for validating validation on something. You're like, oh, yep, I found it. The top 20 things are obviously all about the things that I believe. Well, that's part of what you've searched and looked up in the past and why you're getting those results. Nothing to the contrary. So, just as she's going through this one, just I'm blown away by, just again, it's why I love the book club. You learn all these things you didn't know. And I as she really started getting into it, I think the ability to work where I can see working with the team on this one here and using the positive influence. And I loved it towards the back half or later part of what the section was here, talking about incentives and washing of hands as as ridiculous as that. And I will fully admit I'm in that 95% of the population that does not scrub viciously for 15 seconds after using a public restroom. I'm in that 95%. I'm not in that 5%. That's why. But no, they talked about food workers, hospital workers. They're pretty much the same. About only 1 in 3 people truly wash their hands for the full 15 seconds with soap and water after. But what did they do to get to change that? And it wasn't just here's cameras and we're watching you, not the reinforcement of something negative, but it was here's an active score counter. And all of a sudden, here's an electronic display board that every time somebody washed their hands and they could see it in real time as it's happening. And that changed basically compliance with the expectation from 1 in 3, 30%, all the way up to 90% of people were then washing their hands the full 15 seconds with soap and water, hot, like how having a active tracking scorecard. It made me think of one other thing in our everyday life now that we've seen, ever since these plastic water bottles have overtaken, and now what have we seen kind of like to combat that? We see it in all the airports and hotels and all these other places. Those refill stations with that little electronic counter. How many water bottles have been saved because you're filling up at this station? Something I hadn't given any thought to before. All of a sudden, every time you go to fill one up, you see it's like, oh, there's been 800,000 water bottles saved by people filling up. Like it makes you feel good about refilling a water bottle instead of just grabbing a new one. And having that active positive reinforcement immediately, the instantaneous positive results, what a difference that can make. And so it just had me thinking, like, what are some of the different things of that? What immediate, automated, positive reinforcement can I do with the team? And just to get the desired results that you want. And obviously, where that's coming from is yeah, they don't want a whole bunch of plastic filling up landfills. Makes total sense. So show people the positive ways of refill and what you can do on that. So it's I found that at first I thought, all right, this is going to kind of be just a boring brain book. Anything but. I it's very easy to follow along. I'm liking the stories. It's overall, I think this is going to be a fun one to continue with. So that's where we're at, starting off with the influential mind from the mind of Chris.
I could jump in here. So I think it's funny. So you mentioned a few things that that I had it also written down. So I thought also this was going to be, I thought completely that it was going to be a different kind of book. But I got kind of pulled in pretty quickly. So I actually read ahead for like the first time in our book club. So I was actually kind of excited about that. But I won't go too far ahead. But the Google thing was actually something that stood out to me the most when they were talking about the numbers, about how many times things are Googled. And by the time you read this entire sentence, they have already Googled X amount more of, et cetera. And I had no idea that things were customized based on my searches, which is a scary thought. And I think that that changed the way that I was even looking at it. Unless you clear all your history and clear the cache and all that kind of fun stuff all the time, you're going to continually get those kind of results. So I thought that was really interesting, Chris, when you brought that up. So a couple things that that kind of struck to me. So my dad is going to be 74 in February, 75 in February. My dad is this guy. So my dad is the guy that you cannot, the more you argue with him, the more he will claim that he's right. And he has legit, embarrassingly enough, gotten into like arguments over politics recently. To the point where he'll tag me in something and I'm like, don't tag me anywhere. I have to block him from things because it's like he's getting a little out of hand. He needs to be kind of talked. So as I'm reading through all this, for some reason, he kept popping in my mind, which not for a good thing, but he will defend his belief over facts. Well, I mean, he says they're facts, but obviously his belief. So I think it's kind of just interesting that this kind of all fits into place. And then the other side of my family is divided over the other things that they're fighting about. So it's kind of funny that they're all just defending it based on beliefs, not necessarily facts. So I find it to be completely true. She obviously says in the book, people protect beliefs before they protect facts. And as you mentioned, Chris, I mean, based on what we're seeing here, and when you think back on what they're applying here, it totally makes sense. Um, and then it says the fastest way to make someone resist is to make them feel controlled, and that people support what they help create. So basically, direction is going to matter in what they in one way or another. But the control is going to what's going to make it all backfire. And so that was something that I kind of stuck with because corporate America, I felt it was a lot like that all the time. So you kind of feel controlled. So people are kind of acting out in certain ways and kind of go their own path, whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what the situation is. But telling people they're wrong usually makes people believe them harder. Logic doesn't beat identity, it says. And then to find the common ground first would be the best benefit, but that connection changes minds faster than correction. And she says in the quote, is people open up when they don't feel attacked. So I think that that goes for anybody, right? So when you're not feeling attacked, you're able to obviously open up and have more of a discussion. And that's the kind of the way that you get into it with these people. Like my father, I had to find a very creative way to have discussions with him, depending on what the situation is, what the topic is, which is a unique way of our relationship now, kind of parenting our parents. And it says curiosity is one of the strongest influence tools there is, and that interest starts where certainty ends. So I thought that was a great quote. That interest starts where certainty ends. Basically, stop explaining everything immediately and allow it to have a discussion. But don't always agree with everybody. But don't also tell people that they're wrong. So a lot of questions, asking questions, and kind of getting their feeling for it. And I like how it was a lot of leadership built into it. So a lot of different how they can apply and how it was applied previously and how to look at it. So I really like this book. And actually, like I said, I'm reading ahead, so it actually kind of pulled me in pretty quickly. So good choice, whoever picked this one.
I I said, okay, here we go. There's another neuroscience book and all of the things that go on with a lot of the aspects. But I mean, just for the one thing, I think her name, Tolly, having known only one other Tolly before, it intrigued me. And with this whole idea, and it's so much now in mindset work, that the whole aspect of neuroscience. So just being in a level of mindset is lowering a level of resistance, similar to what you were saying, and we both saying. And I think where I started to really kick in, or the oranges really started to juice, because I'm fascinated with orange juice machines in the mall. Just how come it doesn't get clogged up? How come, So anyway, it's where she started in. I mean, she went through the Thelma and Louise story, the Ronald story. But for me, where it really started to kick up and get some juice was the amygdala of the internet. And that really, I'm not a big X, never have been an X or Twitter user. Looking at the platforms as, this is this kind of a platform and that's a platform. And LinkedIn is its own signal type of business professional platform. But X, I mean, I've never used it. I mean, I think I have a handle, but I've looked at other people's responses. And just to be able to curate this little statement must it has to go through a spelling check. Not everyone is perfect, but if you look at them, they're these very much these curated statements, or these pithy, or sort of a cutting or slicing response. And it just really wowed me, and just one of those aha moments that, yeah, it must take a lot of internal emotional response for that kind of curated small, mostly, some political, it could be sports, politics, current events that people respond to, or people's just sometimes, well, I'm not going to use that word. I'll just say lame statements, and they get essentially put across, like you're getting a pound of salami at the delicatessen, just sliced. It's just everybody's taking a slice of it. The other piece that for business that really struck me from a sales perspective is how, if there is a level of resistance, it's now more actually acutely forming in my head during the conversation, to not so much what their resistance is, but how do I reposition my words in that. I mean, I can stay in a script in my head, but that's a shotgun approach. And so you have to reformulate how you're able and how you're speaking to somebody without moving them. Sorry, the hand there, get everybody dizzy. Moving people into this area where you're not challenging and creating this alternative, natural, I guess, amygdalin response from people, or so that they don't go into this other level of resistance, but being able to speak to them in the not the negative, but in terms of for instance, I mean, we can use a lot of examples. You can use the X39 examples of LifeWay, where you can, and different types of insurances that you're protecting against something. But what if it was looked at and you speak immediately, instead of at the negative aspects, you speak at the positive, and what those alternative statements might be. It was just fascinating. So, I mean, I'm up to, I think at this point, the fifth or the sixth chapter, and, backing down and rereading over the last several days and kind of coming down the ladder here a bit and going over it a little bit more. I mean, it's had this whole idea for me in terms of the neuroscience, is it's a really fascinating, I mean, just for yourself, and then as you speak to other people, whether you're on the telephone with them or you're in person with them, family members, and different political types of conversations, those, I don't know. Sometimes they can be nuanced conversations or they can be blunt. Um, and I just, from that particular perspective, I don't entertain political conversation over dinner table or family dinners. Um, and I've actually told some people afterwards that, you know, did we really, when we were little during the Vietnam War, say even we'll dial it back to Hubert Humphrey. I'm really dating myself, but being a little kid back then. I mean, did our parents actually sit with grandma and grandpa and all of the old timers and all the cousins? Did we, from hors d'oeuvres to dessert, did we sit around and talk about politics? I actually asked a family member about that. And she said, you know what? She didn't know she was getting drawn in. And she said, actually, no, I don't remember. I don't remember them. Maybe they might have having cocktails over there, having hors d'oeuvres. Maybe the men did. I don't know. The women, are in the kitchen getting things, back in the old days, getting things kind of, teed up. And I said, well, why is it different now? So, I mean, there's just different ways of handling it. But anyway, it's a good one. I like it. The Influential Mind. And it's really going to be it'll be up there in the front and center shelf area.
Hey, Ron, I can tell you why it's different because of what she talked about social media,
You're breaking
media
up.
influence, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot more influence
Yeah.
now with social media. I mean, 24 hours media, like when she talked about with Ben Carson and the Trump, debate
Right.
and what Ben Carson said, and everyone, you know, Trump's not a doctor, but he said that these vaccines are hurting people. So I just think there's so much more of a divide, not even in our country, but in our world, where, I mean, the shooting out in San Diego, in the mosque. I mean, it's like there's such a divide with religion, politics, and everything that is, 18-year-olds are, having political violence and, attacking religions. And it's definitely a completely different world than when we were growing up. I mean, we barely knew what was going on with politics when you and I grew up, but now it's like it's in your face every day. I mean, what president can you remember that was in the news and talking to the media every single day? Like from his lips to the media, like even Obama, I mean, he talked to the media, but it wasn't a daily basis that you were thinking about the president of the United States. So I think that's why it's so different now, is because it's in our face every single day.
Shades are deep.
Okay, I'll go while she's being quiet. Okay, so first of all, guess what, guys? I couldn't get the book. Like, I tried really hard. Anyways, it's coming June. No, summer. It's coming in a week. But I did get it online for the first chapter or two chapters. So, um, two things I really loved. First of all, anytime you want to influence someone, you have to create a reaction, she said. And it's usually an emotional reaction. So you have to like have it so it's something close to their heart and something they're passionate about to actually influence them. And I loved what everybody said. Like there's so as soon as you start talking about something, your social media, everything you're getting comes to that. And I really love that. But Have you ever noticed that if you are having a debate, say with somebody, and they're trying to convince you of something that just is not in your core belief, and if they do it properly and use something that's in your life, like say a child or a spouse or whatever, you can relate to it and understand it and think about it. But I find when you go away later, you can undo that thinking really, really quick. Same with hypnosis. I've always said I'm one of those people you can never hypnotize. And they agreed with me because I would undo that afterwards, whatever they did. But I love what she said here. There has to be a reaction for you to influence somebody. And then evidence. You guys, if it doesn't matter what you look at, if somebody puts enough evidence out there, if you actually want to believe it, you will. Like she said that you wouldn't because there was no emotion attached to it. But I feel like when people, like Ron talked about politics a little bit there, right now I think Trump's great, but lots of Canadians don't like Trump, like really don't like him. And you get tons of reels about him, but at the same time, I'm like, oh no, like we're not sitting there with him. So analytically, I'm just like, no, I'm not in the room with him. I actually don't know what's going on. You can tell me everything that you see on TV or whatever. I don't own TV either, so that makes a huge difference. But yeah, I just feel like if you want to share something with somebody, you have to apply to their emotion about it. So like get close to their heart, like whatever is in their life right now, like right there. That's the best way to influence. So I didn't read probably as far as you guys did, but my book's coming on Friday. So that's it.
Anybody else? Mark?
Yeah, I haven't started.
just
I'm here to listen. Oh, sounds intriguing.
Okay,
It
awesome.
sounds like it's going to
Well,
foster some real good conversation. So I will be listening over the holiday weekend.
it is really good. I like you, Chris. I was pleasantly surprised. Um, I will tell you, it kind of disrupted my OCD a little bit with the whole washing hands and my whole thing that I have with people being sick and talking about in the restaurants, all the people getting sick, people not washing their hands, and then hospitals. So that definitely wasn't good for my mental health. Thinking about as many times as I go to a restaurant and how people don't wash their hands. A huge percentage of people don't wash their hands. Because when I go to the gym, like every single time I leave, I wash my hands probably for 30 minutes. So I really enjoyed because I don't feel like yet she the persuasion books, you know, sometimes manipulation books, like the 48 Laws of Power. Like that book felt very manipulative to me, and how to overcome that. And this book feels for me, it feels more, you know, self um, influence and being aware of what you're influenced by, and being self-aware with, how you're influencing your kids, and or how you're being influenced by, any side outside resources like social media or, your friends and there's certain people that we trust, so they have a little bit more influence in our lives, and I've seen this because you have that trust factor. And so I really love how and I don't have my book with me because I'm driving to a meeting right now, but I've highlighted a lot of things that I really like that she said in the book. And I like the perspective that she has on influence. It's a very, very different perspective. And like I said earlier, I love the example of, the debate where, Ben Carson was, he's a doctor, a psychologist, and, he was not as definitive in his statement with vaccines, and he's a doctor as Trump, and people believe Trump over, you know, Ben Carson, and what that could have done, and how measles are, you know, vaccines are down and the measles are up. And so it's very, very interesting. And, you know, there's all these social media influencers talking about peptides right now. And then you have other people, you know, talking about how the peptides are dangerous. And then, you know, like, I mean, I think you know, people talking about strawberries. I remember this in the book where, I mean, I've seen strawberries are bad for you. You know, it's a fruit and there's too much sugar. Bananas are bad for you. Like, and I'm just like, this is a natural fruit from the earth. And if you wash the pesticides off it, can it be that bad for you? You know, but there's all these gurus. Eggs are bad for you. This is bad for you. This type of meat's bad for you. And then there's people saying, oh, it's great for you. So it's just like, it depends on who you listen to and what you're influenced by. But I feel like the book is phenomenally written, and I feel like it's spot on. Actually, our call before this, Kyle got on and was talking about influence, and his son's hanging out with a new guy in tennis, and he's got longer hair, and he wants to have longer hair, you know, and he's being influenced by this kid that he really likes, is really cool with, and you know, so that's why I love homeschooling my kids, because I want to be careful what influence they have in their life, and you know, put them in a bubble, whatever you want to say. I just feel like these are the critical years that I can impact the influence that they're having in their life. So I think this book is spot on for where I'm at in my life, and you know, with my kids and even in my business. So I think it's really, really good.
I think that's it because Cindy's just always listens. Thank you, Cindy, for always joining, and even if you're just listening. Rolla, welcome. And then next week, we'll just do the second version of this. I'm not going to be here, but Justin will let you guys into the meeting and all that stuff. And it'll be good. He's so funny. I think I won't be here for the next two, actually. I'm not sure. But somebody will let you into this meeting and send the stuff out. We'll see you guys next weekend.
Have so much fun in Japan.
Thank you guys.